I started off as a painter, as a young painter, and was in art school, but I was very, very restless. I was about 18 years old and decided to leave the art college where I was studying and take some other subjects at university, which included liberal arts and art history. And just by coincidence, I ended up living in a house full of documentary film teachers and students. And it was through those relationships, and especially watching documentaries, that I completely changed my orientation and felt that I had found what it was that I needed and wanted to do. I really can't tell you how exhilarating it was for me at that time to see documentaries, because they didn't really exist in mainstream culture. And to see films that were critical of the Vietnam War, or to even hear the voices of women of color, refugee women, women workers, to see pieces of history retold and reanalyzed. And I think for me, as someone who had grown up in a working class family of refugees, to hear voices that were not Betty Crocker or, blonde housewives, women who actually worked and struggled, or people who had gone through war and genocide. It was so exhilarating. You have to put your mind into a time when the universe was not saturated by media and by every voice conceivable. As it is today, because there was so much hidden at that time, and the idea of being a witness to things that were hidden or that were not told seems so obvious. The thing that I should be doing, given my interest in art and in storytelling. So I was very influenced by filmmakers like D'Antonio, who were very critical of war, or Julia Reichardt, who was making films about women, or Robert Frank, who was looking at reality through a very artistic lens. All the films that were coming out reanalyzing the Second World War, like The Sorrow and the Pity by Orpheus. All those films were absolutely a revelation to me, and I wanted to be part of that, to change minds. I've been very lucky to have two films presented at Cinema Politica. One film is called Malls Are Us, and Malls Are Us is very much a critique of the traditional shopping mall, its history, how it became very, very popular, what's happened to it since its inception, since the 50s, and where it is today. And where it is today is actually all over the world. It's a model, a very North American model that's been exported and transformed to places like the Middle East and India and China and Latin America. So I wanted to look at both the history, the philosophy actually that went behind the shopping mall, and what it's doing today in terms of the environment, in terms of culture. I think the story of the mall is this almost this battle between idealism and greed. And so people can have very good intentions, especially when it comes to architects and monument building, but in terms of what actually really happens, can be quite frightening. So the idea of creating a monument for community that will be very democratic spaces where everybody can go is a very laudable, nice idea, but how consumerism takes over those spaces and really reduces them to what you can buy and spend, and how those spaces are manipulated through people who are actually paid to manipulate shoppers to buy. All those things I found very, very interesting. And I'm happy to say that the film, in addition to being viewed through Cinema Politica, has gone on to play at MoMA and be in many festivals, but also is a part of curriculum in many universities, and was also very promoted through the whole library system in the States and elsewhere, has been on TV in so many places that I feel that critical gaze at the shopping mall has really been communicated through that film. Family Motel is a completely different film. And I must say that with every film that I do, I really try and find the form that works with that subject. And with Family Motel, the form that I took was alternative drama. I'm very, very interested in that kind of fluid border between documentary and fiction. And sometimes documentary goes more towards a kind of pure cinema verite. Other times documentary is much more constructed. And I've had several films where I've actually constructed fiction within documentary. And with this film, Family Motel, I went, I suppose, the furthest I've been towards in the direction of fiction, and I'll explain why. The subject of the film is homelessness among families in Canada, in North America, particularly among families who are immigrant or refugee. And I came to the film through documentary because I was working on a film. It was a series on women in poverty, and I was shooting in the States, and I came across these very abandoned, horrible motels where homeless families lived. And it was very, very moving to witness this. And I came away from that shoot thinking, oh, I'd love to make a film on these families who live in motels. But at the time, which was around, I would say, 2006, 2007, people were very, very reluctant to talk about poverty. It's funny now because things have changed. A lot of people are talking about being poor and not having enough to live. But at that time, I think the Reagan ideology of you're poor if you're deficient, it's your fault, that was very much in the spirit of people's minds. And after doing documentaries on many subjects, war, all kinds of things, I found, which I was surprised to find actually, people very ashamed to talk about their poverty and very afraid because of the whole welfare system. So I decided, I need to find a form that's going to work for this subject. And I thought about the alternative dramas that for about a period of 10 years came out of the National Film Board of Canada, where filmmakers would write a loose script, work with non-professional actors, and kind of work with community or a community of non-professional actors to construct the film as it went along. And this was kind of the idea that I had. And I ended up working with the Somali refugee community in Ottawa, many of whom had experienced these motels for homeless families because their immigration period came at a time during recession in Canada, and they were really the first mass immigration of people of color. And it was a fantastic experience, both artistically and in terms of my own learning. I think the motivating factors which kind of seduced me into becoming a filmmaker, they're still there. They've changed just because of the kind of widespread use of documentary. Now everyone is creating documentary, but I still feel that there is enough there, enough of the questions that I have about difference, about otherness, about how we can change minds and create a better world that still keep me in the world of filmmaking, and it just makes me want to do more. Sometimes I feel it's almost I'm addicted. It's a drug. I can't stop. Especially in documentary, I think we have the opportunity to look at how art and politics can come together. And of course, that's my dream, to fuse them together in a seamless way, documentary is a wonderful platform for that, because you do need art. I think you do need art to tell stories. And when you're working with subjects or with characters, they come out of a certain history, they come out of ideologies, out of material conditions. So for me, thinking about art and politics, it feels very natural for me to do that. On the other hand, I would not want filmmaking to be a pamphlet for political ideas. For myself, those films are less satisfying than when I understand a story or I meet characters and the politics flow through those storylines or flow through those characters. I don't have to be told this is right and this is wrong. There's some aspect of discovery for me. I think with the technological revolution that's going on, and how art and culture is being transmitted through the web, it's not obvious how production is going to be maintained. Many people are working for free or for very, very small wages. Many people are unable to create their wonderful projects. At the same time, there's so many people going through art and music and digital media schools, coming out, graduating without employment. So I think we have to insist via our provincial and our federal governments that culture is a great place to invest in, and that we need jobs. We need to strengthen this industry to be known for it around the world, to provide work and opportunity and development for our young people. That's very much our dream, especially during this time when technology is changing all of us so quickly, and the production aspect to putting things online is more obvious than actually how we're going to be paid for our labor. That's still very, very unknown and very, very much in flux. But the answer is not to not pay for cultural work. I'm very opposed to that. So that's where I have more questions than answers at this point. I love the work of Cinema Politica, I think, and I've seen their evolution over the last many years. How Cinema Politica started on a fairly small scale and didn't know whether it would be able to sustain itself and build. And I think everyone can agree that Cinema Politica has created a kind of mini institution that is so attractive and so exciting, not only to students but to the entire community, and has become known certainly in Canada and in other festivals and other viewing spaces as this very inventive and very clear curating space for activist films, for discussions between films and activist groups. It really has a vision which it's been able to share far and wide, and to think that they can draw audiences of 700 people, 800 people to Monday night screenings of issue-oriented film. It's fantastic. No one would have believed them had they just put that out 15 years ago that this was what they were capable of. But I think they prove time and time again that they can bring very serious films, sometimes low-budget films, very individual, visionary films to audiences of young and old, and have them talked about, have them shared, have them debated on a weekly basis through live give and take. It's astounding what they've done, and I am so pleased and very honored to have had my films be part of that. And my hat is clearly, saluting Ezra and Svetla and all the volunteers and board who put these film series together. And I just wish that they're able to continue to be prosperous and to spread their model, to spread their message to wider and wider spaces around the world. They've got something great going, let it live.